Hello and welcome to the SETI Live. My name is Bettina. I'm the director of the SETI Institute's Artist in Residence program. This is a very special edition of SETI Live. We are delighted to premiere the documentary Xin Liu's Inward Expedition, which is being released today by Art21. Art21 produce award-winning documentary films about the world's most groundbreaking contemporary artists. And it's my immense pleasure to welcome Emma Nordin, Art21's Director of Education, and of course, our artist in residence, Xin Liu. Hello to you both.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello. Hi.
Thank you so much. Oh, you can keep going.
Okay, I'm just going to pass the mic to you in a moment, so you can tell us more about Art21 and the wonderful work that you do. So this will be followed by the screening of the documentary, and then after that, Xin and I will have a chat about her touching and thought-provoking work. Before I do that, though, I would like to welcome all of our viewers who are joining us from around the world on YouTube, Facebook, X, Twitch, and LinkedIn. Hello to you all. Tell us in the comments where you're joining us from. And if you have questions about anything that we talk about, please put those in the comments. We'll make time at the end of the chat to respond to your questions, or maybe weave them into our conversations as we go. So, okay, Emma, I'm such a huge fan of Art21. Please tell us more about your mission and the work that you do.
Thank you so much. And again, we're so excited to be here with you all today. Again, my name's Emma Nordin. I'm the Director of Education at Art21. And if you're unfamiliar with Art21, the mission of Art21 is to educate and expand access to contemporary art through documentary films, resources, and public programs like this one. And you can learn more about Art21 at art21.org, our website, or you can follow us across social media at Art21. Today is the premiere of the film Xin Liu's Inward Expeditions, which is the newest film in our award-winning digital film series, New York Close-Up. New York Close-Up is devoted to capturing early career artists living and working in New York City. Nimbly combining the tools of art and science, artist Xin Liu expresses what it means to be human through a diverse body of work that includes frost-coated sculptures, a bubbling fountain of crude oil, and a performance in outer space. I want to quickly thank Art21 staff, including the film's director, Andrea Chung, and Art21 also wants to thank the locations featured, particularly Art Pace, SETI Institute for allowing us to partner on this talk, and of course, the artist herself, Xin Liu. So with that, enjoy the film.
I believe artworks are self-portraits. It's really difficult not to carry yourself in the works. As artists, we tear ourselves apart and reassemble it in every piece that we're creating and recreating. I started as an engineer basically because I was a student who was good at math and physics. Art later came into my life because the pure pleasure of creating got me quite addicted. I grew up in the northwest part of China, in the city that is called Kramei. It means black oil in Uyghur language, our local language. My grandparents' generation immigrated to that area under the state order to develop a city digging oils. I have this memory of celebrating oil in my hometown. All the families working on oil will get these souvenirs from the city. It looks like a pyramid, and in the middle of it, there is a drop of actual crude oil. I want to kind of create like a magnified version of that, but then at the same time, the bottom of the entire work would be a fountain of oil. I kind of like the air bubble one. I feel it's more lively. Or if I really want a lot of air, I just let the tube expose to the air. I wanted to have this motion inside the oil pan, giving this sentient existence. It's not just a passive material to be extracted. It's a living being beneath the Earth's crust and transforming the world above it with terror and lots of violence. Growing up in a town that essentially was built by immigrants within China, I felt very much connected to the idea of going to a place for its resource, creating generations and like prosperity in that sense. That entire idea is parallel to space exploration, which is a big part of my practice. The idea of people traveling so far, going to another planet, felt like what my grandparents' generation did when they were in their 20s. I started working on space exploration when I was a grad student in MIT Media Lab. I submitted the proposal and made a robot that carried my tooth and went to space. It was launched as a research project, but for me, it's really a performance piece. I want a part of me to go to space. I wanted to create an avatar that enabled that journey.
We count down, the rocket blazes, engines pulse. Now we sing like birds, breathing cedar air. We're made of dust and light.
There's something about expedition. It's very beautiful, very glorious, but at the same time, it's a very lonely journey, often going to Beijing for college and going to the United States for grad school. I was trying to arrive at somewhere for a better life, but then that journey is just pulling me further away from my home. And I think as humanity, we are imagining all this version of futures of living on another planet or living with AI. But I felt like as you live in your current place, some part of yourself died and shed away. There is this inevitable death that happens along with the growth that we so desire for. I am thinking a lot about my own reproduction. Nowadays, I'm at that age, people are just telling me, oh, you should freeze your eggs. Don't even think too much about it. I have a level of alienation and fear over that process. Reproduction technologies claim to solve all your problems, but in fact, dramatically change our body. we freeze time in this biological machine because we need to get a better career, we need to go study, we haven't found a good partner yet. I felt like it's all about productivity, whether time is useful or not useful. I'm making this collection of objects and sculptures about this fear, referencing lots of bone structures, but they're all warped and twisted as I imagine how our body would change through these experiences. And I'm cooling down the sculpture to a low temperature so they're gonna freeze, kind of having frost growing on the sculpture. I do believe in science and technology in lots of its methods and its ability to transform the world. But at the same time, I'm hoping there is a limit that we can never reach because it also strips away this kind of fundamental idea of what it means to be human. In this calibrated and measured world, art allows beauty and emotions to be part of the process.
That was so good. Oh my God. I'm gonna have to watch this a couple more times. There's just so much in there, so many thoughts and ideas. So before I dive in though, I wanna just shout out to our audience and say hello to the USA, Germany. We have, I'm from Norway, Colombia, hello to New York and Texas, and the northeast end of Capricorn River, West Virginia. So hello to you all. So Xin, let's talk a bit about your work. You've got this really impressive and very diverse body of work, like from work in zero G to mixed media sculpture. I know you even do stuff with VR, AR. And it reminds me that Andrea Trung, she's the director of the director and Arts 21 associate producer. She joked that the title of the film should be "How to Make Anything with Xin Liu," because you do so much. But I feel that there's a common thread, and that's the human experience, like that balance between science and technology. So, and I'd love you to start maybe our conversation with cryo, because it was also this idea of how life is suspended in water that you came in with for the residency, and like this personal connection that you have with that work as a woman. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you all again for even making this all happen. Beth from SETI just did all the tech. I just clicked a link and this all worked. It is marvelous. It's crazy. I'm so excited to talk to everyone cross-platform. Yeah, cryo is my newest work and it's actually still continuing. I just confirmed a version of it, much bigger installation work that will be hopefully premiere in a museum next year. So kind of looping back to the other pieces, I think cryo is really what happened with me after I'm 30, it's like after 30 years old, that I really start to realizing this change in my personal life, that prior to my 30s as a woman, I never really thought about the so-called next generation, birth or anything like that. All I wanted was like, I'm a human being and I grew up in such a remote, small city. I was having this insatiable appetite to see the world. Yet, slowly through that process, I realized there's no gain without loss. And that's what I was trying to process through the making of artworks in most of my time. And then the cryo pieces really came in a way that I was very much hit with the biological clock, and among people talking about it as if freezing my eggs is this easy cut solution. And my mom is actually an OBGYN doctor. So we had a lot of conversations around women's body and how it is manipulated through medical technologies. So it became really clinical yet emotional process for me to think through all that. And I talked to many people while working with space exploration as my main interest and the point of departure, and then all the things start gluing to each other. But with SETI, actually, really interestingly, I think the proposal around water was before even the birth of cryo as a piece. So when we first started talking about water with SETI, is that I was doing research and understood that when we think about planets, that each planet, even though we're living in this current moment, we could look at the ice on Mars or other planets in a way that they are kind of millions years of future of Earth's condition. So the planets, they are not static, they're constantly growing. There are planets at the end of their life, or some of them at the beginning of the planetary life forming moments. And Earth, in that sense, is really a baby in our cosmic system. And we're looking at other planets to understand that relationship. And water is really fascinating because it contains life. And ice is this moment of like, as if time could suspend there, because we could, well, unfortunately, there are glacier melting on Earth that is releasing microorganisms that has been frozen in time for millennia. And now they are coming back to the current timeline of this world. And what does that mean? And I found that both beautiful in a way, because it's time traveling ability of life, yet also, of course, horrifying because our current timeline cannot really cope with an ancient life form. Or we look at Mars and thinking about life in millions of years later is essentially just desert. So I think that's really where all this kind of thoughts kind of synthesized together, and it has been quite an interesting journey to talk to people and bringing all these ideas together, I think. And also, one thing I do want to mention, I think it wasn't really prominently featured in the film, was that I always found cryogenics as a technology is more like a narrative device when we watch a sci-fi film or read a book, that it allows one protagonist, often a guy, live through eons and conquer the world if he desires to. Yet it's really fascinating how the same foundational idea of life preservation on Earth now on a large scale is actually used to preserve women's reproductive ability. And I found that to be really provocative. thinking about that relationship and the manipulation of time.
Yeah, I love that. Like so many like really great artworks, that your piece Cryo is so multi-layered, that you talk about, it's like ice, like a time machine, where you can suspend your personal time and expand, the functionality of your body. And then you take that global perspective and saying, there are, of course, implications for our search for life in ice, because it's conveniently frozen for us. It's like we're opening this, cosmic freezer department and see, like, what's around. But you're right, I hadn't even thought about that whole sort of storyline idea in so many sci-fi stories, where somebody, or astronauts get cryo sleep. That's just like this nearly like a Deus ex machina device, where you just problem solve and getting us from point one to point B. It's not just a time machine; it's also a space machine in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
And in your I found this like lovely quote that you put on your Instagram, where you talked about the reproductive organs as subject to societal constraints on women's abilities to produce and reproduce, labor as a worker, a person with her own desire, labor as a woman to love and give. So I love that there's so many extra personal layers and the humanity that you bring to this very masculine and cold field of space exploration.
Yeah,
So,
thank you. Yeah, it's just really wonderful to kind of like confront time in a way, right? Because our world is so much about productivity, and reproductivity is almost like a language trick. If you think about that, we also pause on time in order to preserve that.
yeah. Actually, what the other thing that was really noticeable in the video was how easily you navigate the art science intersection. And you doubled up on your academics. You have that engineering background and then the MFA on top of it. How do you see that interplay between art and science? Is it just two distinct spaces where you have this choreography where you step into one or the other, or do you more work in the in an intersection, like in the middle of that Venn diagram? Is that's where you live? Like, what is your process like when you're sort of stepping from technology and science into the arts?
Sometimes I think about it as like the way how, if you look at a painter, you don't ask, why do you paint to make art? Instead of, why don't you make a sculpture to make art? Because there is a tool or a language someone is familiar with, or someone write to make art. And for me, engineering is really my tool, because how I was trained and educated, it became a very much the methodology I adopted to observe the world as well as expressing myself. Yet art making, I think, in a way, really mimicking that craft interest of mine. So fundamentally, I enjoy making things. I even make like the menorah for my husband's like festivity and etc. Like I like making things at home, and so I do enjoy just the pure creation. Yet I think art nowadays is so much beyond a craft. It is also the thinking, and for that thinking, it is never a clean cut to be either art or technology. It is philosophical, it is society, it is culture, it is a moment that we really got struck by a feeling and it needs to respond to it. And I think sometimes people can sing towards that moment. And for me, I chose to make objects, no matter it's physical or digital. That's just how I responded to it. But of course, there is an aspect of the interdisciplinary approach that I really think is crucial for humanity, especially now with AI. We really, really need more art, more culture as we advance science and technology. I think it's almost like a proof that the only way to tell that someone is a human is not because someone can code or someone can write a lawyer argument. It's not because someone can drive a car. It's because someone can feel and be able to share that feeling is ultimately artistic. So be an artist on like society level is a way, I think, for us to deal with those challenges such as AI and this fear of humanity not be able to hold itself together. Actually, this morning just come back from a roundtable discussion between Google and Serpentine Gallery, and that's exactly what people have been talking about.
Yeah, that makes I think that AI discussion is so front of mind and for so many people, and I totally agree with you. Even though AI purports to make art, AI makes images, and making an image is not the same as making art. Like you are making objects, you connect it to the human experience, and I think that is sort of core of your creative approach, and that idea that we must be mindful that technology doesn't expunge human experience, because there's no substitute for our experience and your experience of floating in space. I was very struck by what you said about exploration and that journeying being such a lonely experience. Because normally when we think about space exploration, it's so glorious and we all want to be astronauts and it's exuberant. And then when you're there, you're linking it to your experience of lost and really grieving of losing Earth. And I think that is so interesting that you create that tension. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, I so agree with you on the notion of grieving for leaving Earth. It really started with the first moment I experienced weightlessness. I think that's back in 2017. I participated in this parabolic flight. To explain a little bit, is essentially an airplane that is doing a free fall. And then, of course, as it goes forward and falling, it creates a parabolic arc. And as it goes free fall, what happens is that the plane drops and everything inside of it, in reference to the plane, they start to float because it's actually never about the disappearance of gravity. It is everything falling together, and then we have this reference living with each other. So, like you said, when we look at the image of space exploration, we're often looking at this floating hero or flying hero, superhuman position. So that's what my assumption was before I stepped into the airplane. But then when the first arc hit, what I experienced is that I did not fly because I would not fly. What happened is the floor beneath me dropped. And that is a really strong physical sensation of loss that I actually experienced because I never left our ground, no matter it's the actual ground or it's the referenced version of it is my chair right now. I never felt like detached from something so familiar, yet I barely noticed. So that for me is like a body sensation, but also almost like a philosophical awakening moment. And that really started my entire practice and questioning on this idea of like uplifting, growth, everything going upwards as the ultimate direction of future and what next step would be. We always have this word forward. instead of like backwards. If something's falling, is it kind of connects with failure. It connects with deterioration. So that's really becoming something known. Like I am actually much more interested in falling. So that's now where lots of my work end up dealing with death, because I believe in this metabolic processes is necessary for us to feel alive, for us to not feel like a robot, keep being upgraded for the next version of it. And that's somehow carried me through this years of art making.
I think it's really fascinating that when astronauts speak about the experience of being in weightlessness, that they're very much focused on describing their tasks and the sort of the physical intricacies of, not being able to drink water or having toast crumbs flow through the International Space Station. But you're there as an artist and you have this really embodied experience and you're paying attention to the human experience of being there. I think that really proves that we need more artists in space. That you go up there with the drums, like I'm making art, I'm like being there, I'm observing, and that you have a completely different lens that is so important. So thank you for going up there for the rest of us.
Thank you. I really have this like petition. I think we need to change the definition of artist from someone who paint or creating artworks towards just people who are sensitive to the world. I think that should be the real definition of art, because I've seen artists who working in the most professional yet robotic way. And I've also seen a Lyft driver having the most interesting, provocative thoughts and conversations with his passenger and changing lives. So we really start to change what it means to make art, or like what it means to be an artist as a human.
Yeah, this paying attention to the world and curiosity and making things, I think, should be at the core of that definition. And again, there's so much overlap there between art and science, because I found that scientists also ask big questions and are curious and observe and make things. So, I think that your work really helps also to bust us out of silos of how we think about ourselves and what we do every day and how we see the world. We need to, democratize a little bit more, which I think your work is also doing. I think, what's it you who talked about eccentric billionaires going into space and sort of, holding on to our access to space, and by you making work, like sending parts of you into space, like your wisdom tooth, which is just so lovely and sort of poetic and a little bit absurd, which is why I think it's also funny. It's just really great. That's you're subverting the system in a way to get access into space. You wrote this great article about what space art is, and that it's not just making art about space, but that's putting art into space. Do you think that maybe objects take on a different meaning once they've gone into space, and that it changes the meaning for us?
Yeah, so maybe go back to the wisdom tooth. I realize I often need to explain it a little bit. So there is this old saying in Chinese is that when you're a kid and if you lose your teeth, if it's a top wisdom teeth or top teeth, you bury it in the ground. And if it's a bottom teeth, you throw it up high to the ceiling for good luck. So that tooth I sent to space was a bottom tooth of mine. So that's kind of why, or partially why, but I hope that explains things a little bit. But I think there is this, for me, first of all my project, the things I sent to space came back to Earth. So is definitely the journey that is much more interested. It's more important to me rather than whether they live beyond to like in the world. We have enough stuff floating there already. And why that journey is important is actually quite fascinating because for me, it's almost like, why do we travel, right? Like, why would you go to see something and come back? And for myself, I'm not an astronaut yet, but the idea of apart me leaving so far and come back is giving me an opening to create an art piece. It is this really painstaking 2-year negotiation, creating robots and like try to send something away. And just in 15 minutes, it comes back. To me, it became the work rather than there is an actual aura or something go along with a thing that went to space. Because honestly, nothing really changed. It's not like we had any genetically modified creature as it comes back. It's pretty mundane in a way, but also I think it is more important for the person, the people who send off those objects, and what that journey changed the person who pursued for it. So I think that's much more important for me to think about that relationship, as well as it does require a person to think the world slightly differently when they work with projects at that scale, even though it could be a tiny work, but then you still have to deal with the actual physical scale of how a satellite or like a rocket would be launching to that altitude and then actually orbiting around the Earth. For 2 of my projects, we went to International Space Station, and I invited other artists to participate in the work. And what happened is that the work was launched during the pandemic, so we never met in person, the artists, but we have an email thread, and people would be taking pictures of the International Space Station as the work passing through them. So there is that kind of global relationship, planetary relationship that is embedded in those works. Could be quite interesting for collective communication and sharing. So for me, sometimes I really believe that the early land art movement are much better inspirations for artists when we think about ecology, planetary relationships than the so-called current art and tech works.
Yeah, that's a wonderful. It's a much more like global planetary perspective. So I want to just like take a little pause and remind everyone that the SETI Institute is a nonprofit organization, and it's due to contributions from viewers like you that these SETI Live events are possible. So if you'd like to support us, please consider going to SETI.org and hit donate. And I'd like to thank Julia Brela for 100 stars on Facebook, and also Denis Boutou. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, Denis. Bogutovac, 99 stars. Thank you so much. And also, of course, Art21 is a nonprofit too, so maybe visit their website at art21.org, just shouting that out as well. We have a couple of really cool questions actually from the audience. So Teresa Singer asks, your comment about the existing and emphasis on productivity as a language language tricks begs me to ask how you might connect it with artificially and emotionlessness in your visual works. So yeah, how would you respond?
Well, here I want to understand a little bit better of the question. I think the part I was talking about productivity and reproductivity was particularly referencing that work and cryogenics as a technology, because the reason we freeze or pause time is because time is not even productive. If you think about it in a novel, the story is, you know, the good parts hasn't come yet, so let's just like pass time, and only a week all the heroes awakens when important things happens. So for me, is something about productivity is really bugging me, and thinking about that relating to women's reproductivity as the ability to give birth. So that's the language trick that I was very fascinated about as I was working through the project. And I think in the meantime, for me, I was trained in mechanical engineering. So you probably can see that for my visual practice, I try to find this middle place that is both handcrafted, but also entirely fabricated or machined. Yet for me, they are almost like a bilingual conversation that it is really asking for the artist or myself to get the ability to like glue them together, but without creating a Frankenstein. So there's something I think quite fascinating about art making or object making, is that we try to create a visual that is seductive yet repulsive, because the work themselves are dealing with technologies that are so desirable, thinking about cryogenics, like living forever, or oil, if you think about energy and the wealth it brings. Yet, you know, the both work, they're shiny, but also having elements of it is really aggressive. Like in the oil piece, because I actually used wasted oil for the work, it's really smelly. So if you go into that space, it's very intense, like scent. You are in this dirty garage somewhere, and yet because this oil is shiny and it's bubbly, it is also like seductive for the audience to almost want to touch it. But if you do, it would definitely make a mess on your body. So I was very interested and have been still trying to find that balance in my work.
Yeah, amazing. It's just so multi-layered. I mean, we could talk like for another 2 hours about your work. Easy. Actually, I would love to bring Emma back in because maybe Emma can talk a bit more about why you brought Xin Liu into your series and like your perspective of the work as well.
Yeah, well, I think the film speaks for itself. I think you can see just the variety of work that Xin Liu is working in. And I loved what you said about the definition of an artist changing and that we should be sensitive to the world around us. And I think that's a very important facet of curatorial choices at Art 21, thinking about what is happening, what are people talking about, what are the big issues of the day, how are artists thinking about those issues. We talk a lot about how artists are really incredible problem solvers and sometimes solving problems better, I dare say, working in the arts than some scientists, but you know, partial, work with artists more. And I think that Xin Liu's work is really speaking to many of the big issues of today, especially the ones you just named, like AI, you know, cryogenics. What are we doing with our bodies? Why are we freezing them? Again, I think the film really speaks for itself. So I just want to say again, thank you so much, Xin Liu, for letting us into your practice, into your studio. It's hard for artists to let us in and kind of pull back that veil, but I know it's so important to viewers and especially young artists to see examples of what they could be doing in the future and what, I mean, they could go to the moon, literally go to space and think about, you know, where does the future lead us? So it's a multifaceted process, but again, thank you so much, Xin Liu. Really, the film is such a testament to you and to how you're envisioning the future and what art and science can be.
Thank you. I'm so honored. Honestly, I was kind of joking, but not really joking with my friend. I was like, oh, I'm on Art 21. I'm done with my artist career. I've made it. Because
Oh,
I first came to United States and pursuing my MFA right after my engineering training in undergrad. And it was really difficult first year because my English skills and also just the educational system wasn't really clear to me yet at the time, like how to communicate and how to talk to people and how to be an artist at all. So I really felt like I was a student of Art 21. I still remember like every day I eat my dinner and watching videos of artists, people I admire and working in their studios on my computer. And I was like, okay, maybe I can do that. Oh, this is
really.
like super personal, yet really encouraging. I really felt like I learned so much about how to be an artist from Art 21. So I'm like extremely honored to be part of this journey now.
Thank you. Well, I have to ask, did you have a favorite? Were there ones that you like to watch over and over again? Or anyone that you saw that you were like, oh, I want to be
It's
like,
so funny. I saw the one Andrea Zitel's A to Z
yeah.
film about her high desert in Joshua Tree. And a year later, I went there as like like an artist resident and lived there for like a couple of weeks.
So fun. I'm so jealous. That's a great film. If everyone watching, that's your homework. You should go watch that film after Xin Liu's.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, so jealous. I want to go. It looks incredible. That's great. And actually, now you say that, Andrea Zittel, I see so many parallels between your works.
Yeah, totally.
Together.
Yeah, she's essentially camping on her own Mars, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's wonderful.
And you know, I'm also such a huge fan. I teach art education, so I use Art 21 very often, you know, to just make students aware of what is possible. And I know that is also part of your mission to make art more accessible to everyone, also in the education system, to expose students to different ways of thinking and making. And yeah, they're just absolutely wonderful little vignettes into little like spotlights into an artist's life.
Exactly. We cannot possibly capture everything about an artist in 10 to 15 minutes, but we certainly try.
Yeah.
And thank you so much again. It's been really, really incredible. And yeah, I'm going to make you answer it too. Do you have a favorite?
Oh my gosh. The one I use a lot is Frank Stella. He does these action words. And this is how I get our students to connect their pedagogical practice to their personal practice. So and then we go and do that in class. So, sometimes we can really like take chunks of an artist's work and just like plump them onto the lap of the undergrads and so go.
Well, that's fabulous. Well, again, thank you so much. And I do just want to shout out our filmmakers who made the film, particularly the director, Andrea Chung, for making such an incredible testament to Xin Liu. So thank you both. And thank you to our audience for watching.
Yeah, and thank you to our audience for watching. And thank you both for this lovely gift of letting us premiere the documentary. And so thank you all. And we'll hopefully we'll stay in touch. We'll collaborate again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.